Okay, so the recording is started, and then I have a PowerPoint, so I'm going to share my screen.
You can keep listening to that, Valerie. Ah, gotcha.
So I will ask that if everybody can just mute themselves. Obviously, when we get into a discussion portion, we can unmute people and talk a little more, but just to kind of reduce the background noise. Let's see. So I hope everybody can see my screen okay. And thank you all for joining. I know it's an evening training, so it can be hard, but I really appreciate everyone taking time to be here. My name is Sydney Van Winkle. I'm the Invasive Species Projects Coordinator for the Finger Lakes PRISM and the Finger Lakes Institute. We're obviously all here today to talk about the Macrophyte Survey Program. And so I think I'm just going to get right into it. I'm just trying to move around. Here. Okay. So today's agenda starts with an overview of invasive species. You all may know this information, but it's always good to have a refresher. A brief overview of the Finger Lakes PRISM and of the Finger Lakes Institute. And then everything about MSP, our goals, the general structure of the program this year. I'll give a brief overview of previous years, and then I'll go into our 2022 plan. And then obviously I'll go over the new data collection tool that we're using this year, which is the Survey 123 form. I hope you all didn't have too much trouble locating that on your mobile devices or desktop computers. And then I will get into a very high level invasive species identification portion at the end. All of this is going to be pretty high level. I'd like to move through as much as we can, and then we can get into the nitty gritty when people have questions. The PowerPoint itself will be provided to everyone in a PDF form, and then this recording will also be provided next week. So just starting off really basic, what are invasive species? Why do we care about them? So invasive species are non-native to the ecosystem under consideration, and their introduction often causes or is likely to cause some kind of harm to the economy, the environment, or to human health. So when we think about different economic impacts, we think about impacts to agriculture or recreation. In the Finger Lakes region specifically, we think of tourism because that's a major part of the Finger Lakes region. Environmental impacts could be loss to biodiversity or a change in natural processes that would normally occur in the environment. And then human health impacts could be impacts to water or air or flooding. And it could also be like injury or illness to people. Some common characteristics of invasive species is that they have very high reproductive rates. They're generally pretty aggressive plants and they outcompete native species. They don't have any natural predators usually, and overall they just reduce or degrade the habitat or food that native organisms would usually rely on. So this is called the invasion curve. We often show this when we're talking about invasive species management. So what this shows basically is that over time, if a population of invasive species are left unchecked, that population will increase exponentially. And with that increase in population size, when they're not managed, the control costs for those species increases exponentially as well. So basically the best time to manage invasive species are in these first two phases on the graph. So that's preventing them from ever entering an area or eradicating them when the population is small. And if we do those first things, we'll keep our control costs for these species lower. So just a little bit of a background about the Finger Lakes Institute. So this was established in 2002 as a department of Hobart and William Smith colleges. In 2013, the Finger Lakes Institute secured funding from the Environmental Protection Fund via the DEC to host the Finger Lakes PRISM. So the Finger Lakes Institute is dedicated to promotion of research and environmental education in the Finger Lakes region specifically and beyond. And it has many faculty-led research projects, students get involved, and they do projects in collaboration with their partner organizations, similar to the PRISM. So then the Finger Lakes Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management, or Finger Lakes PRISM, is housed within the Finger Lakes Institute, and it's one of 8 PRISMs across New York State. You can see on the map there, it's quite a large area. We have 17 counties and we have all 11 Finger Lakes in our region. We have a number of aquatic and terrestrial invasive species programs that occur throughout the region. And some of the high priority invasive species that we focus on are hydrilla, starry stonewort, and water chestnut, and then giant hogweed, the spotted lanternfly, and the Macrophyte delgid. So the Finger Lakes PRISM's mission really is to reduce the introduction, the spread, and impact of invasive species within our region through coordinated education, detection, prevention, and control measures. So I'm going to get into some of our programs just really briefly. We have many aquatic programs, obviously, because we have all of the Finger Lakes. We have a watercraft steward program that's shown in the bottom right of the screen. This is where stewards are located at boat launches, and they educate the public about invasive species and how they can travel on your boat, and you should always clean, drain, and dry your boat. We have a number of education and outreach initiatives. This includes K-12 education programming, and we do several outreach events all year round. And then we have early detection through region-wide surveys that happen in various ways. So the Macrophyte Survey Program, this program, is one of those ways that we accomplish early detection. We also have the Water Chestnut Control Program, and we have 12 pulls scheduled for this coming season, which are volunteer pulls, so you guys can also participate in those. And then we do have specific field teams of people that we hire to do early detection surveys and to survey for hydrilla specifically. And the hydrilla team also works on some control efforts with partners. So then we do also have terrestrial programs. The Trail Survey Program is kind of the sister program to the Macrophyte Survey Program, but you're on land doing this and walking through trails and taking points in IMAP and just reporting any invasives that you find. We have a spotted lanternfly education and outreach program, and then we also participate in giant hogweed control, and that's in conjunction with the DEC. So if you're interested in any of the terrestrial programs, I did put our terrestrial coordinator here. His name is Matthew Gallo, and I linked his email here as well. So now getting into the Macrophyte Survey Program in more depth. So what is the overall goal of this program? The goal is to learn to survey, identify, and report high priority invasive species throughout the Finger Lakes region. So the priority invasive species that we're focusing on this year are hydrilla and starry stonewort. And how will we accomplish this? Basically, we ask you all to sample bi-weekly, so once every 2 weeks from June to October. And you identify and report what you pull up on your rake. The rake that I keep talking about in all my emails and just everything is shown in this slide at the top right. Those are our new rakes that we just launched last year, actually. But basically you do a rake toss, you identify what's on your rake, and you report it using Survey 123. So just briefly looking at MSP over time, this program started in 2017 and we had 11 volunteers in that pilot year. In 2021, just last season, we had 27 volunteers and we covered 18 different water bodies. There were 106 rake tosses performed throughout the region, and we had 45 confirmed aquatic invasive species reports, which is great. It's really good to know that information. And then, like I mentioned, we launched new rakes and kits for all of our volunteers last year. And a lot of this was based on volunteer feedback that we had gotten since 2017. The old rakes that we used to use were heavy, a little awkward to throw. So we got some specially designed for this program specifically. So looking forward to this season, so far we have 52 people that are signed up. We are looking at a 4-month program duration, which is great. We'll have 9 sampling blocks, so 1 block is every 2 weeks. And we're also hoping to incorporate our watercraft steward program into this program a little bit. So that would mean having some of the people that we hire for that program throwing rakes when they're at boat launches, when they have some downtime, and just recording what they're pulling up. So I did want to just touch on some benefits of participating in this program. These are benefits that go both ways here. This program makes early detection and rapid response of invasive species possible. So last year, starry stonewort was actually confirmed in Canisius Lake, and it hadn't been there prior. That was through this program. And since then, the Lake Association has done a really good job of going out and surveying and really trying to figure out the extent of the starry stonewort. And so it really just expands the reach of professionals who can't be everywhere, but we really need eyes everywhere. It also increases collaboration in invasive species monitoring efforts. So it's not just us, locals can take a part in this, and it's important. It also provides an opportunity for us to get feedback from you guys on our invasive species outreach, our monitoring efforts, our control, and just overall management of invasive species in our region. And then ultimately, it provides information about what species are in each Finger Lake, what species are maybe a threat to each Finger Lake, and then just regionally what's going on with invasive species. And a lot of this last point will be coming through my biweekly newsletters, which I'll be sending through email. And the first one will actually come next week on Monday. So keep an eye out for that. So very high level, just general data collection tips for this season. We really want to make sure that everyone is noting all of the species that you find on your rake. So that's including native species. We care about the high priority, obviously, but we want to know everything that's there. And then regarding plant density, so there's a question about this. This year in our survey 123, we added images in the reporting form that you can actually click on that will enlarge for this question. So you can kind of have a reference to go off of. And plant density is important for the rakes because it helps provide context to us about what condition the ecosystem is that you're sampling from. And then also we do ask that you just try to sample from a consistent location throughout the season. And this is mainly because if we collect enough data over enough years, we could maybe see some changes in populations caused by seasonality. So it could help us determine what species are growing where and when, and maybe when they start dying back, because this varies a ton. It can vary year to year if we have a dry season or a wet season, or lake to lake even. So next, I'm going to get into our reporting tool, the new one. So I'm going to ask that you hold off on your questions until the end of the presentation, just so I make sure that we get through all the content. And I'll just kind of breeze through this because all of it is in the handbook. Basically, these exact images and everything are right in the handbook that I distributed via email. So just really quickly, we chose to go back to survey 123, which we've done in the past because this tool is very customizable. Ultimately, the data will feed back into IMAP invasives.
I wish I could whittle inside.
And then I did want to mention that everything that's reported in survey 123 and also in IMAP gets checked by professionals. So please make best guesses to what you think you're pulling up. And as long as you provide a photo, we can confirm it, even if it's wrong. And we also will give you that feedback. So best guesses are welcomed. So I guess just getting into it here, the first step would be to download the survey. You don't need an account. You would just click continue without signing in here. And then to locate the survey, you could use this QR code. And this is also in the handbook. So you'd have to scan it on your mobile device from the handbook. So the first step that I outlined in the handbook was opening the survey after you've located the proper one, and saving your favorites. So saving favorites is something we do when we're surveying because it will save us time every time we're out throwing a rake. So basically you would hit collect to start open a new survey. You would enter in the fields that you know will be consistent. So that would be your name, your observer ID, and then the water body. So after you enter those, you'll click the hamburger menu. That's what I call it. 3 lines up in the right corner of your screen. And then you would click set answers as favorites. It will go back to your normal screen at this point and it will seem like it really didn't do anything, but you'll end up hitting the X, closing the survey, and then saving it in your drafts. Once it's saved in drafts, you'll have a new folder that says drafts at the bottom below where you clicked collect in the first step. When you go to open a new survey, you'll basically click on the hamburger menu, click paste answers from favorites, and then those lines that you autofilled, they should just feed right into your survey. So again, this is really just to save you time when you're out sampling, and these things that won't be changing. So then after you do that, it's fairly straightforward. Just some general tips to this survey. Make sure that you're reading all of the fine print below some of these questions. We took the time to try to give as much explanation as we could. And I think that that will really help guide you. You can either use the map to locate your location, and if your location services are on your device, the map should automatically find where you are with your mobile device. If you're somebody that goes and takes the data in the field and then you come back and enter it on your computer, you can also enter your latitude and longitude by hitting yes to enter coordinates manually, and then it'll show where you should enter those coordinates in. And then after that, we do ask that you enter the water body and an approximate depth of where you were throwing your rake. So the rakes have a 30-foot line on them. So what we do in the field is we throw a rake, we let it hit the bottom when you can feel that it's on the bottom. And then we'll pull it up and we'll try to measure about a foot on each pull. And that's how we get the water depth. Next up is the rake toss data, the most important data for this. So as you'll see here in this image, those little tiny images for trace, sparse, medium, and dense, you can actually click on them and they'll enlarge. So basically when you're in the field, you will take your rake toss, pull it up, and whatever image it looks closest to, you'll pick that one. And then you'll enter the dominant species first. So this is the species, obviously, that has the most on your rake. And then the dominant species should also be included in your total species list, which may seem a little bit redundant, but just for like data processing at the end of the season, this is how we had to do it. So then for total species, this one is a bit tricky, and unfortunately, the reason we had to make it like this had to do with the data processing at the end of the season, and just how the outputs are in Excel spreadsheets at the end of the season, basically. But you'll start by clicking the plus button, and you'll be given basically a page that has all of the species that you can click and choose from. You'll choose the first species you want to enter, and then you can only put one species per page. So to enter your second species, you have to hit the plus button again at the bottom, and then you'll have a new page show up with a new list. You can only select one. You have to click plus again and continue doing that. But it may seem like you're only doing one species, but you really are collecting several species there. There are also warnings put into this survey. So if you click hydrilla or if you click starry stonewort, you're going to get a warning. And it's okay. We just want to kind of remind you like, hey, you clicked a high priority species. If you really think you found this, like contact me immediately. And just literally send me an email, maybe attach a photo. I will see it because we get email alerts whenever they're submitted in this survey. But just as good practice, if you think you found that, please even give me a call, because it is that important. So then Next in the survey, we ask if you collect a sample. So we are asking that if you find hydrilla or starry stonewort, to please take a sample. And the sample would basically just put it in a container or a plastic bag with some water. And then follow the steps on the survey to enter the name, what you're gonna label it, and then I would have to get that relatively soon. I could come get it from you. If you could drop it off at the FLI, we could make that arrangement. And then there are areas to enter notes, anything like that. And then just again, a reminder at the end of the survey to please take photos, take samples, especially if you find those two hydrilla or starry stonewort. And then photos are required. So if you take a rake toss and you didn't find anything, we do want you to record that rake toss and just say that there was nothing on your rake. And if that happens, you can submit a photo of an empty rake or of the scenery because you'll all be on the water. And I'd love to see where you're sampling from. And then I guess the last piece here is when you're going to submit the survey, you will press the check mark at the bottom. And you'll select send now. And then the other note at the very end of this is that if you're not in range of Wi-Fi or you don't have any service, your surveys will be saved on your device, and they'll be saved in a folder that's created called the outbox. So when you get back in range of service or you're connected to Wi-Fi, we ask that you go into your outbox and make sure there are no surveys in there. And if there are surveys in there, click send because we haven't gotten it until you do that extra step. So that is my brief rundown of the survey 123. I also want to note that if you're doing it on a desktop, it's generally the same, but things do look different. Plus signs might be above certain questions instead of below them. So those are just things to be aware of. I do want to put a shameless plug here for NYSAW. So Monday, June 6th to Sunday, June 12th is New York State Invasive Species Awareness Week. And there will be events all throughout our region going on. There are different calendars for events, both at our website and at a New York State website. Both are linked here, so you can check that out. And if any of you participate in, you have clubs or you want to do a guided hike, or you want to have some event of your own for an organization you're affiliated with, you can do that. And we are actually taking events for submission until May 27th. And that's going through Matthew Gallo again, our terrestrial coordinator. So if you're interested in putting on an event, you can reach out to him with that information. So now I am going to get into some macrophyte identification. This is super high level. I'm going to tell you the key things for some of these species to be looking out for. The slides that I'm going to go through have a lot more on them. So that's why I'm providing the slide deck to everyone because there's so much information. So just keep that in mind as I kind of breeze through this, especially because I do want time if people have specific questions. So what is a macrophyte? Basically, a macrophyte is a plant that's large enough to be seen with the naked eye, and it grows in or around water. These are some of the field guides that we use at the Finger Lakes Institute and at the PRISM. These are also what all of my slides are based on, and they're also really good resources for you guys. I will be sending out our updated invasive species field guide next week with all of the other things I'm sending to you guys on Monday. It'll be a jam-packed email. So be on the lookout. And also if you want to reference this slide later on, these are really great resources, especially if you're interested in plants long-term. So the first thing that we think about when we're trying to identify different macrophytes is what their growth habit is. So I often think, is it emergent? So emergent would be something like the cattail shown in the top photo. They're kind of higher up toward land, but they're still in the water. Is it floating leaved or is it free floating? So floating leaved macrophytes are actually rooted to the bottom, but their leaves float on the surface. And then free floating macrophytes, actually their roots aren't rooted in the bottom of the sediment. they're floating in the water column. And then the last one would be, is it totally submersed under the water? So some identifying characteristics, there's quite a few of them to think about, and I'll get into some of these a little bit more, but we tend to look at the leaves. That's the main one. Then we might look at the stems. If we can get the roots out of the sediment, if that comes up, if we pull them, we'll inspect the roots. Do they look strong, weak? Is it a rhizome? Maybe they have tubers. And then if it's flowering, which flowers aren't something you should really rely on by any means because they have a very short window of being available on the plant. So you can look at flowers, and then you can also look at seeds and fruit, which also have a very short window of availability. So definitely not things to rely on, but they can be helpful sometimes. So thinking about different parts of the plant, the stem, so that's the main body of the plant. A tuber, which is something I just mentioned, it's kind of this thick portion at the bottom of the plant. And it's actually shown in the photo here, or the drawing in the middle. And it provides the plant food storage. So that's actually hydrilla, and hydrilla does have tubers. It's one of the things that you can look for if you can get the root up. Leaves, they grow off the stem. They're kind of the vegetative part. Leaflets, so these are individual segments that radiate from a common stem, and all together they make up a leaf. That sounds kind of confusing, but that image to the right on the bottom, that shows leaflets. So one of those individual leaves is actually a leaflet. Margin, so we'll talk about leaf margin a lot. That's the edge of the leaf. So on this hydrilla example here, you can see that the edge of the leaf, or the leaf margin, is toothed, and that's one of the identifying characteristics of hydrilla. We can talk about a turon, so that's also a vegetative bud that's capable of growing a new plant. And then flower and seeds, those are both reproductive structures of the plant. So this comes out of our field guide. It goes through the different leaf shapes. So wavy margin, a serrated margin, different heart-shaped leaves, a simple leaf, and then the leaf arrangements. So that's how the leaves are around the stem. We have alternate, opposite, and whorled. And we'll talk about whorled a lot for macrophytes. So these are two different kinds of pondweeds, and I'm just showing the different kinds of stems here. So you can have kind of what we would think of as a more regular stem on the left. It's kind of like tube shaped. And then on the right, that is a stem actually, but it's completely flat. So those are both pondweeds, but they're different kinds of pondweeds. So these are the root structures I was kind of talking about. The one on the left is rooted in the sediment normally. I believe that that's eelgrass. And then the one on the right is a duckweed, and that actually is the floating plant. So the roots aren't in the sediment, they're just floating in the water column. So here are some pictures of flowers. Again, flowers can be great sometimes, but they have a very short window of being available. And I did want to show on the right, those are two different types of plants, and the flower looks very similar. And there are several aquatic plants that have the white petaled flower with the yellow center. So that would be an easy way to mix things up, and you'd have to ultimately rely on the leaves for something like that. And then seeds. So seeds, they can be very helpful, but there's a small window, like I've been saying. Something not to rely on maybe, but if it's something like water chestnut and you see that seed, you'll probably know it's water chestnut. The center of the screen there has the water chestnut seed that has 4 spikes all around it, and it's quite a large seed. Yeah, and it really hurts if you step on it. So I guess if you find that seed, you would definitely know what you had. So now I'm going to get into some specific species identification. So again, there's going to be a lot on these slides. Don't feel like you have to read it all. I'm going to send this out, but I'm just going to kind of breeze through these with the main characteristics. So the first one is hydrilla. It's invasive. It has visibly serrated leaves that are in a whorl of normally 4 to 8, but in our region, it's normally 5. So that top photo there shows the whorl of leaves. They're in 5, and they have that toothed edge. And basically, if you see those characteristics, you can almost guarantee it's hydrilla. I do want to talk through hydrilla just as an example. So if you pulled up this plant, you would look at leaf arrangement, the number of leaves in a whorl, and then the leaf margins, what the edges look like. And then if you have the root, you might look if it has tubers or turons on it. And so for this example, basically we would identify that the leaf arrangement is whorl. Then we would say, okay, how many are in the whorl? It's 5. Leaf margins, toothed. Yes, we see tubers. Okay, check, that's hydrilla. But you should also be aware of the lookalikes. So hydrilla has several lookalikes. Some are native, some are invasive, but it's going to be those characteristics, like how many leaves are in a whorl and if it's serrated edges or not, that will help you distinguish between the lookalikes and hydrilla. So one of its lookalikes is called Brazilian elodea. This is invasive, however, it's not yet in the Finger Lakes region, so you probably won't see it. However, that's why we do this program, because if anyone's going to find it, it might be you guys. So it has whorls, it has 4 to 8 leaves, so very similar to hydrilla. However, the edge of the leaves are smooth or very finely toothed. It's not as obvious that it has those rigid edges. And generally, this plant is a little bit more bushy than hydrilla would be. Some more native or some more lookalikes. This one is native and it's elodea. So this is super common throughout the region. I bet you probably will see this on your rake at some point in the season. And it has leaves in a whorl again, so just like hydrilla. However, it only has 3 leaves in a whorl. Sometimes you'll see 4, but it's most often 3. And then the leaf edges are smooth. So you can see that this plant doesn't quite look like hydrilla, but it would be easily mistaken as hydrilla possibly. So next, we have a variety of native naiads. So naiads are lookalikes, but when you look at them, the leaves are arranged in pairs and they're opposite from each other. So once you would identify that, the arrangement of the leaves, you could kind of be like, we know that's not hydrilla. Hydrilla has whorls. And then it does have smooth leaf margins, many of them. And depending on what one you're talking about, so spiny naiad actually has very toothed margins. And you can see that in the center photo on the bottom of the screen. So if you pulled that one up, it's pretty obvious that it's different from the other naiads. And then this one, this is actually an invasive naiad, so it's brittle naiad. This one's pretty obviously different than the other ones I just showed, mainly because of how bushy it is in its appearance. The leaves are opposite, but they also have this very stiff curled appearance to them. And then along the edge of the leaf, you'll still have those really spiny margins. But the curled leaves and just the bushiness of this plant are kind of some of its most defining characteristics. So this one is super common. I bet you will see it sometime during the summer or possibly all summer. It is the invasive Eurasian water milfoil. So one part of this plant that really gives it away is on the leaflet at the top. It looks like somebody maybe just cut it off. It's a pretty blunt end. And the leaves are divided into at least 12 pairs of leaflets, and the leaflets are in whorls of 4 around the stem. And it kind of has this like red tinged or brown like color to it. And it is around for quite a long time. It comes up in May, like now it'll start growing, and then we know it stays well into the fall. And it does have a native look-alike species, so that's the northern water milfoil. However, the leaves on northern are much more pointed at the top. It's not like a blunt tip. So that's one way to tell. And then I'll show you in this next slide. So Eurasian water milfoil, if you take it out of the water on your hand, like this photo, it kind of collapses on itself. The native counterpart that looks a lot like it would kind of stay up on your hand. It's much more bushy and stiff. It's a little bit stronger than this species. So that's one really good way to tell the difference, is to like lift it out of the water on your hand and see what it does. So again, the Eurasian water milfoil, the invasive one, very widespread. And you're definitely going to see it because it starts growing in May and you're going to see it die off late in the fall. So next up, we have the invasive curly-leaf pondweed. This one has really rigid, oblong, reddish leaves that grow alternately on the stem, as you can kind of see from the photo on the top right. And it does have finely toothed edges, but the really defining characteristic here is the really wavy margins. So if you pulled this up, you would likely know it was curly-leaf pondweed. We do know that this species generally in our region starts growing now in May. It's kind of an earlier species, and then it'll die off pretty early in July. So next up is invasive starry stonewort. So this is actually a macroalgae. So if you squish this species between your fingers, it'll actually pop, and that's because it's an algae. It forms really dense beds, and its most noticeable growth is toward the late summer. So just to show you some photos, it has whorls of 4 to 6 kind of blunt branchlets. So the top photo is a piece of starry stonewort laid on a kayak. You can see it's really kind of a leggy plant. It kind of spreads out, and then the whorls are kind of far apart, especially the lower you go on the plant. And one way to tell this plant, aside from its lookalikes, is that it has these star-shaped bulbils on it. And you can see some of those stars in the photo with the penny there. So these are just some more photos of starry stonewort, one of the high priority species. So the bulbils are up in the left. The middle photo is looking down into a body of water, and you can just see the mat that starry stonewort makes. It just completely takes over. And then just a size reference photo and kind of showing you the branchlets and how leggy the plant really looks. So now we're going to get into just a few floating leaf macrophytes. So the first one is water chestnut, which we've talked a little bit about. We also do control efforts with this one across the region. It is a floating leaved aquatic plant, and it forms this kind of rosette shape, and the leaves are glossy and triangular. And then they have these pretty obvious like toothed edges. It does have a flower. It's a 4-petaled white flower. And then the seed also is very distinguishable. It has 4 spines to it, and it's quite large on the plant. Next up is the invasive European frogbit. So this is a free-floating plant. It has kidney-shaped or heart-shaped leaves, and they have purple undersides. And this is one of the plants that has that very common white flower that has 3 petals, and that blooms in the summertime, but it's a very short window. So then we're going to get into just a few of the most common submersed aquatic veg that you might see. So the first one is extremely common. It's American eelgrass. It is an aquatic plant that has leaves that are like ribbons. They're kind of just long, flowy pieces. It's kind of like just a grass, but underwater. And then it does put off a flower during the summer, and these flowers are on like a curly shoot that comes off the plant. And you can see that in the bottom photo, the really coiled up curls, that's the flower from eelgrass. Next up, we have Cara or musk grass. So this is one of the lookalikes for starry stonewort, actually. However, it's much smaller and not as leggy as starry stonewort. It does have the world branches. However, if you're trying to decide if this is starry stonewort or Cara, and you smush it in your fingers, it'll also make that popping noise. But Cara will smell like garlic or skunk, and it's quite a potent smell. So if you crush it and you smell that, you can almost bet that it's Cara. Next is common bladderwort. So this is also native. This is a free-floating plant with alternate leaves. And if you find this plant, it's pretty cool because it is carnivorous. It has small bladders, so these black kind of sacs that you see that are on the plant, they actually collect organisms, small microscopic organisms, and the plant will gather nutrients. So that's why it's carnivorous, actually. Very cool plant. If you happen to get this on your rig, definitely take a good picture of it. Next up, we have common coontail. So this plant has whorls of kind of bristle-like toothed leaves. You can see an up close of the toothed leaves in the top photo there, kind of in the middle. It is in whorls of 6 to 12, and the leaves on each whorl kind of fork out at the end, which again, you can kind of see from the photo. It's quite a bushy plant. Even when it's out of the water, it doesn't just fall flat, it kind of stays up. But this is also very common, so you're probably going to see it at some point in the season. Next, we have Illinois pondweed. So there are many pondweeds. This is just one of them. This has submerged and floating leaves, and you'll probably see a pondweed, this pondweed, in the survey. I'm fairly sure that we kind of just categorize them as a native pondweed, or if it's curly leafed, that's very obvious that that's the invasive one. This is also a pondweed, sago pondweed. Its leaves are kind of thread-like, and the leaves layer up at the end and kind of appear to be like a fan. You can kind of tell out of the water in that picture there. Next up, we have water stargrass. So this one, the flower is pretty distinguishable if the flower is present. It's that yellow flower that's shown in the image. The leaves grow alternately along the stem, and the stem it's rounded, but it's pretty compressed. And then it branches out into these like flat leaves that you can see that are alternate on the stem. So with that, I think I might have flown through that pretty quickly. Yep. That is the end of my presentation. So I do want to open the floor if people have specific questions or if people are having problems with anything. You can feel free to unmute yourself or drop a question in the chat. I do see we have a few questions. So the question that was just sent about pondweeds, yes, I do think some pondweeds do. In this presentation, and I'll send you guys the actual presentation PDF, I had some slides hidden that had like a lot of extra species that I just didn't think we needed to cover in this training, but many of those other pondweeds are in there, so feel free to go through them and take a look at the other species that I didn't cover tonight. I'm going to just stop sharing my screen so I can. Try to look through this. Okay, so Kristen G said, when I click on collect, my HAB surveys come up. Interesting. So
hi, Sydney, this is Kristen. Yeah, so I have that for HABs too. I guess I use the same app. So when I click on collect, my HAB survey comes up to fill in. And I don't know how to get off of that HAB survey and put a new survey in.
Okay, so we did used to use an old survey 123 form and it might be linking that. Did you try to do the QR code?
I didn't, because I had it on my phone already. So,
So
okay,
this is-
maybe I should uninstall it and try again.
Well, you can just go into the app, into the Survey 123 app. Let me just see, let me make sure. And then you should be able to see all of your surveys kind of on when you open up the app and you click continue without signing in, or even if you do sign in.
Right?
You should be able to see all the surveys in that search bar. You can click on the little QR code.
Gotcha.
Let
Okay.
me see if I can pull up the QR code because I have it in my presentation.
Great. Yes, I'll do that. Thank you.
Yes. Let me just get this up. Share. Give them a slide. So you should be, after you click that, a camera should show and you should be able to scan this code right here.
Yep, it's working. Thank you. Yep,
Yep.
I have it.
Okay,
Great.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yep. Let's see. Is there a prompt to confirm a sent record? Basically, after you click the check mark, after you click the check mark in your survey, it should prompt you to send the survey, and then you'll hit send now. And then after you hit send now, it'll kind of disappear. So that would be your sent record. I'm not sure I'm understanding that question fully, but if you want to either tell me more information, we can go through it.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was some way to either look at the records you've sent or to locate your submissions in some sort of a history, or just something that either number one, to confirm that it actually has been sent, or number two, to go back and look at what you've done.
Okay, so that's a really good question. Unfortunately, no. Like during the season, there's no way for you guys to go in and like look at the points that you've submitted. However, one of the things I will be including in the newsletters are maps, because I can see that on my end. So I'll be showing like, look at our spread, look at these species that were found. And as far as knowing if it's been sent, if it is off your device and you don't have an outbox anymore, there's no outbox, there's no like surveys in your outbox, it has been sent. I know that doesn't seem super reliable, but that if it's gone off your device, that's how you know it was sent in, basically.
Okay, thank you.
What was that?
That was just, thank you.
Oh, yep, sorry. I answered the pondweed. How many hours should we spend per rake toss? Do not spend any hours per rake toss. Rake tosses should be quick. So rake tosses, it should take, you let your rake sink for about 30 seconds, depending on the depth, and the weight of the rake isn't great with these new rakes, and we're working on that. Basically though, as quick as you are done with one rake toss, your job is done. So you go out to the lake and you throw it once, and it might take 10 minutes maybe, or if you want to spend extra time really looking at the plants and identifying things out as best you can, maybe it'll take up to a half an hour, maybe an hour. But we by no means think that you all have that much time to be spending on this. This is a favor that you're doing for us. So as quick as you can get it done and submit the one survey every 2 weeks, that's what you should be doing. If you want to keep taking multiple rake tosses though, we're happy to take the data. More data is always better for us. We do want photos for every rake toss. So even if you pull your rake up empty and you're telling us in the survey that there's no plants on it, just take a picture of the empty rake or take a picture of the lake. I would love to see lake scenery. I don't get to do as much field work as I used to, so I would love to see it. but you do have to submit a photo to be able to submit any survey. So just take a photo. If you haven't determined your location yet, or you want to change your location, that's totally fine. You don't have to let me know. The location that you choose to survey at is totally up to you, and it should be convenient for you. It should be where you want to be. Obviously, we do like to fill gaps, but we do have a good participant base here. We have a number of you that are working for us in this survey. So really just wherever you want to go. And if that changes, we want consistency. Ultimately, we'd like you to go to the same place. But if you happen to go somewhere else and that's where you take a point, that's okay too, as long as we get the data and we see the photos. So I do want to reiterate that you enter the name of the dominant species first. So you take a rake toss, you see that it's mostly eelgrass. In the dominant species, you'll put eelgrass, you select it from a drop-down list. Then under the total species present, which is right under the dominant species field, you'll start selecting from a whole list of species. So the first one you would enter there, I just like to enter the dominant species first so I get it over with. I'll enter eelgrass first, select that from the list. I have another species I want to enter. I click the plus, and then I select from the list the next species, and so on and so forth.
A separate picture for each species?
Yes, that would be ideal. If the species are too entangled together, and if you are going to pull them apart and it might mess them up, it's fine to take a picture of multiple species together, but just try to take a very clear photo. And honestly, just take a lot of photos. Like, I'm totally happy to sift through photos, and I'd rather have more photos that are not great and I'll get one good one out of all of them. So just submit as many as you want to, really.
No photos with them on the rake, though. They're spread out on the surface.
Yes, yep. And so that's also where it comes in. You can spread them out on your dock, or, if you're near pavement or something. Black isn't usually good. A light background is usually best. If anybody wants, we have these little white survey containers, and those are really great for photos. So if anybody wants one of those, we can arrange a time to have you pick that up. They're just literally like plastic food containers. But we do give those out so that when you collect species, you can put a little water in there and then put the species in the bin, and you can clearly start to see the leaves will fan out, things become visible. So if anybody wants that, just shoot me an email and we can figure out how to give you that. Let's see. So no, there is no reason really that I'm saying you should take the rake toss from shore. So often from shore is just very convenient for people. So if people want to walk down to their dock, throw a rake, see what they find, that's super convenient. But if you want to go in a kayak, a canoe, if you're out boating, these are all things you can take rake tosses then. During the field season, we take rake tosses off of kayaks. That's what we do. So feel free to do that as well. Again, as far as location, it can just be somewhere that's convenient for you. Really choose wherever you want. If you're really having a hard time thinking of a location, I would be happy to kind of discuss that with you. So if anybody wants to discuss a location with me, just send me an email. I can even try to look at some maps. Like if you're between a couple locations and you want to know where would be most useful, just send me an email and I will help you and I figure that out. So we are, the survey, that is a very good point. We are only collecting information on plants. And that's mainly because we just focus on plants in our surveys. We do other invertebrate surveys in conjunction with partners. But for our data, we really are focused on plants, but there is a notes section in the survey. So if you find something that you think is interesting, if you think you found a rusty crayfish, which is an invasive crayfish, or if you think you found zebra mussels or quagga, note it and then take a good photo, and I could potentially confirm that and enter it into IMAP at the end of the season. So use the notes for that, but that is a good point, and maybe we could incorporate that next season. I would recommend for identification. So next week, I'm going to send you this recording, which has the PowerPoint and it has me talking over it. I will also send you the PowerPoint itself in a PDF. So you'll have all of that. I'm also going to send you a PDF of the field guide, since many of you have or had it in the past. We're just doing PDFs this year for everything. So you'll get the field guide, and then you'll also get the first welcome letter, which many of you indicated you were interested in other volunteer opportunities. The welcome letter, I talk about each one and I tell you where to go to sign up. All that good information is there. So there is a question here about the actual method for sampling. So do we toss it? Yes, that's a good question. So basically you want to throw the rake out quite a distance from you, kind of just throw it into the water. Once it hits the water, you have to give it time to sink to the bottom, and these rakes give a little bit of extra time. Maybe they might be light. Our old rakes were really heavy, so they sank very quickly. You'll let it sink to the bottom, and then you do pull, and it's okay if it scrapes the bottom, because the point is you want to capture what's there and pull up what is on the bottom. So you will want to pull it across the bottom and then pull it in with the rope or the line. And in doing that, you're going to scrape the bottom, and then you're going to scrape some plants that you're getting on the way up through the water column as well. So I hope that helped. Also, shameless plug, feel free to stop by the in-person training if you can next week, and we will be practicing all of these things. So there's that. For HABs, I think report to the DEC as usual. We're not taking any information in the survey about HABs, but it wouldn't hurt if you think you see a harmful algal bloom, you can also send me a photo and in an email and just let me know. And then, I have contacts and people, and we could look into it a little more, because those are still of concern, obviously, for any aquatic program. I just want to share my screen really quick one more time, maybe. So let's see. Just really briefly going again. So when you hit collect, it'll open the survey here. It'll start with your name, your observer ID, which if you don't know it or you don't want to find it or whatever, you can put the number that I have listed there. Then you'll do the map. If you use the map, you'll skip entering the coordinates manually. So that would be skipped. Then you'll enter your water body, the water depth. This is where, okay, this is tricky. So then you'll see a part that says rake toss data. And it might be closed, and I did not show this. So make note that under water depth, it says rake toss data and there's an arrow. you have to click on that arrow for the drop down to show. Then the drop down shows and it says macrophyte density. You'll choose the density. You have to click on a density. So you have to click on trace or sparse, medium, dense. Once you click on a density that's greater than 0, then you'll see the dominant species show up. So then that's where you can do the drop down from dominant species, select what you want. And then you'll see, did you find hydrilla or starry stonewort? Yes or no. And then you'll see the total species. So I just wanted to go through that because that is a little bit hidden. So make sure you open the rake toss data, and then to see all the species, to enter all the species, you have to select either trace, sparse, medium, or dense. And if you select 0, nothing will show for you to put in under that.
Thanks, that made it really clear, but what about the sample collected, yes, no?
So the sample collected, that is really for hydrilla and starry stonewort. So if you find hydrilla or you find starry stonewort and you hit yes, you'll click voucher because you think it's either hydrilla or starry stonewort. So if you think you know what it is, you're going to hit voucher, then you're going to enter the name just based on what you think it is with your initials, the date, and then like hydrilla, you'd use the first 3 letters, you'd put HYD and then 1 or 2 or whatever number sample this is. So probably 1. And then you could enter any notes. You can also use a sample if you pull a plant up and you have no idea what it is, and you're just like, I cannot figure this out, but it could be important. Take a sample, click yes that you collected a sample, and then click other. And so that basically means you're not sure what the ID is, but you want somebody to check this. And then that's where you would put your initials, the date, and you'd put UNK for unknown. It's an unknown sample that you're collecting. And then the other sample, there's like a little note section. So you could say, this looks like curly leaf pondweed, but I'm not sure that's what it is. Wanted to collect this, have you guys check it. I can come pick that sample up and we can take a look.
Thank you.
Yep. Does anyone else have anything that they want to go over? Questions, species identification questions, anything at all?
Can you put the QR code up against, because I got it on my iPad, but I can't get it on my phone.
Yeah.
I pulled it up on one, but not,
Yes.
now I can't get it on the other.
Yep. It's a common issue. Let's see. QR code. There you go.
Gotta open my-
So I think let's see. So there's a question. More clarification on photos. Okay, so photos, you have to take at least 1 photo per rake toss to be able to submit the survey. So,
But a photo of what?
oh,
Do
sorry,
we have to have a photo of?
a photo of the plants.
So you don't want them on the photo of the rake with the plants hanging on it.
Correct, right. So, yep, this is, sorry, it was a little bit confusing how I worded it. So we want you to take the rake toss, pull up plants, and then you're gonna take this plants off of the rake and you're gonna start sorting them out and looking through them. When you're doing that, that's when you can start taking photos. We would like photos of individual plants if possible, because that's the best way for us to identify them. So when we look at photos, we're trying to do the same thing you guys are doing, but we're doing it from a photo. So if we can see how many leaves are in a whirl, if we can like get photos of the edges of the leaves, just a really clear photo of each plant, that would be ideal for us.
each plant or each plant species?
Each plant species, sorry.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
No, these are really good questions. And
All right.
it's
So
definitely
if there's
unclear.
if there's 3 species on our rake, you want 3 pictures, one of each of the 3 species that we found.
Yes.
Okay, I got it now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. Did the QR code work?
No, because I'm getting it, and now it's telling me to sign in. And when I click continue without signing in,
Mhm.
and then download surveys, because I've taken the picture of the QR code, and it's saying sign into ArcGIS online. Please sign in to download surveys.
Well, that should not be happening. Let's see really quick.
It didn't on my iPad, but I'd rather use my phone.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you send me an email, after
Or I'm-
this.
Yeah, or I'm coming over to pick up a rake and maybe,
Oh, okay. That
I
works as
think-
well.
yeah, I can send you an email though.
If you send me an email, there is a link that I can send out. And it's worked for some other people so far. So I could send
Okay.
you the link, and the link you should be able to open the email on your phone, click the link, and it should directly take you to open that survey in the app.
Okay,
So we could try that, but if all else fails, yes, when you come pick up
Yeah.
things, we can.
yeah,
figure it out.
because I could do it on the one, but not on the other.
Yeah, that's very strange. Technology always has to cause
Yeah.
problems.
Right.
So there was a question about what to do with plant species after a rake toss. That is a very great question. So ultimately, throwing them back in the water is very common practice. When we're out kayaking in the middle of a lake and we do a rake toss, even if we find starry stonewort, we will throw it back. That's what happens. Species like, just some background, species like starry stonewort do reproduce through fragmentation. So when you break it and you pull it on a rake, some could argue that it maybe is making it worse because it can then grow. So another alternative is, if you know you have invasive species on your rake, you can take them upland and kind of make a pile. If you're in a public area, that might not go over well if you're doing this often. But for instance, at different boat launches, there are invasive species bins where when we pull invasives off boats, we're not throwing them back in the water. We're putting them in these areas that are far away from the water, where the invasive will stay and not enter the body of water. So yeah, ultimately, if you pulled it out of the lake, you can throw it back. But if it's an invasive and you want to get rid of it, you can also do that. Collecting samples, just to go back to this, if you're going to collect a sample, you should collect it. So we do have Ziplocs available. If you are coming to get supplies, we can provide Ziplocs for you. We recommend putting one species in the Ziploc with a little bit of water, and that will keep it kind of living for a short period of time. And if you collect a sample, email me, text me, call me, like let me know, and I will come retrieve that sample so that we can identify it, especially if it's hydrilla or starry stonewort. So it would be one species per container with some water. That's kind of the methodology there. Yes, there is a question. Can you submit more than one picture for a species to better show detail? Yes. So at the bottom where you add photo, you can take a picture, and then much like the total species field, you can hit the plus sign at the bottom and it'll allow you to enter another photo. So like you can just keep entering photos if you want. And I encourage people to enter more photos because more photos are very helpful for me. Water depth, again, so the rake has about a 30-foot rope attached to it. So if you throw the rake and it sinks to the bottom and you're above it at this point. So if you're taking water depth, the rake has to be kind of directly below you vertically for you to be getting the right depth. If it's far out and you're taking that, you're getting some horizontal depth. So water depth is, it's difficult to get.
Estimate it.
Yes, estimate the water depth, do your best. You can try to basically pull the rope up in 1 foot increments, which is what we do to get water depth, but it takes some practice. So just ultimately estimate it. You're not going to be in very deep areas unless you're kayaking, maybe it might be deeper or out on a boat. But just do your best with that one.
Hey, Sydney,
Yes.
are we getting our rakes at the training on Cayuga Lake?
Yes. Yes.
And that'll be where, any place specifically there?
It's at Cayuga Lake State Park, where the boat launch is, and there's like a pavilion over there.
got it.
So it's
Okay.
right in that area.
I got it. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. We also, at the in-person training, I do want to mention, we will have 2 of our field crew members there. They're gonna come out and go out on kayaks and get us some plants, bring them back for some identification. They'll also just be there to talk to everyone if anybody has questions about what we do for field work. They're really great resources. So they will be there. Let's see if I miss anything up. So the newsletter, I think I mentioned, I might have, maybe I didn't mention this. So I am trying to coordinate pickup currently on the 31st and 1st. If you're not available to come to the in-person training, we're trying to coordinate our supplies for the 31st of May to the 1st, one of those 2 days. And I'm pretty much available throughout those days. If there's a best time that works for you, I'll be at the Finger Lakes Institute. So if you would like to reach out to me and let me know which day works best for you, we can coordinate that supplies. Also, if you want to just come to the in-person training and just stop by very quickly and literally just grab your supplies, that's okay with me. So just let me know that you're doing that so that I can have enough supplies at the training. So either the 27th, the day of the training, you can get supplies, or the 31st or 1st. And if none of those days work for you, just send me an email. I'm at the office a lot, so we can work out a different time. All right, so I think I covered everything in the chat. I hope I covered everything. If I didn't, somebody can yell out at me, or you guys can just send me an email. That's totally fine. Does anyone have anything else at this point? Alrighty. Well, it was really nice to meet all of you, and thank you for spending your evening learning about MSP and aquatic plants. And I'm just really looking forward to this season. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sid.